Now I know we're ready to go. Because when it says recording, where it's talking to me, the crazy machines. Again, thank you all for being here, both in person and online. Tonight's talk is common conditions and how they affect the brain. So I'm going to overlap two common ones that we get asked about. I'm going to talk about depression. I'm also going to talk about fibromyalgia, and they actually overlap. A lot of them do. So we'll go into those things. I'm going to start by going over the general data that if you haven't heard one of my education workshops before, what are the brain waves? What are the different frequencies? What are they related to? And then we'll get into the symptoms related to depression, how they affect you, and then we'll do as well different issues that it can actually cause it. And then we'll go into fibromyalgia and the different patterns that we'll see with that. The takeaway is that both of these are, a majority of the time, we'll see them as a neurological issue more than just a chemical deficiency. That's why if you're taking a pharmaceutical to try to help mitigate this and it doesn't get better, it means it's not a low production of dopamine or serotonin. It's actually an upstream effect that's causing a downstream problem. So the upstream effects, we'll go over them as well. So first off, we're going to start with the brain waves. And why we're going to start with the brain waves is, as always, if we don't understand it and I start talking about all the different frequencies, it'll be a waste of time for you. So we're going to look at the highest brain wave, which is beta. Now, I know there's one above it called gamma, but we don't usually play in that frequency, so we're just going to start with beta. Beta is going to be 13 to 38 hertz. Everything that I'm going to explain here is related to the frontal lobe and how you experience day to day. So it's not going to be related to the back of the brain or the middle of the brain. And when I start talking about that, it's a little bit different, but we just need to understand the frequencies and how they work. So beta in general is going to be your stress brainwave. So that's high productivity, thinking fast. This is going to be stress. There's high beta and low beta. High beta is when you are in fight or flight. Low beta is stress, but it can be productive. So high beta and alpha will make you productive and be able to get stuff done. But beta in general is a stress brainwave. If you want to know the separation, 13 to 25 is low, 26 to 38 is high. Once you get above 38, then you get into gamma. And depending on the researcher, gamma can go up to a couple hundred or just go up to 42. So it just depends on the researcher and what they want to define it as. But all you need to know about gamma is it's above beta, which is 38. Then below that is alpha. Alpha is 8 to 12. Alpha is in the zone, in the flow. Alpha is when you wake up on the right side of the bed, everything's working well. Alpha is also memory. And there are two sides to alpha. So there's high alpha, and that one is 11 to 12 hertz. And then low alpha, and that one is 8 to 9 hertz. High alpha, the difference between high and low is literally memory and not memory. So if you have too much high alpha, you're really smart, you're really fast thinker, you can recall everything. And if you have too much low alpha, this is when you start getting senile. You can't remember stuff. It can lead to autoimmune. It's an indication of a fatigued brain. So the more low alpha you have, the worse you are. The more high alpha you have, the better you are. So when people do things like brain brightening or techniques to try to help your brain be smarter, faster, it's all about high alpha driving, which is 11 to 12 hertz, which will push your brain to function at a higher level. So it doesn't sound like much. It's only a couple frequency difference, but it's literally night and day for people. As we age, we are prone to sleeping more. If we do that, we'll actually slow down high alpha and turn it more into low alpha, and that's where we'll start getting memory problems. Another thing that we'll commonly see is, have you ever heard that that guy's brain went to pot? That means when they smoke or consume cannabis, a lot of it, or marijuana, it will actually slow down their brain and they'll produce more low alpha, and that's why they can't remember things. So you want more of the high alpha than the low alpha. Then we also have theta. Theta is 3.5 to 8 hertz. Theta is going to be your subconscious state. It's when you're intuitive. Theta is also going to be a state when you are able to connect with other people. If you've ever experienced feeling connected to everybody in the world, that's the connection between theta and alpha, and that's Schumann frequency of 7.82 or 1, depending on the researcher. And that's where you go from conscious to semi-conscious, like light sleep state. So that's theta is intuition. Theta is coming up with new ideas. Theta is light sleep. Theta is also when mental healing happens. When cognitive or physical healing happens, that's delta, which is deep sleep. So that's why you get induced in comas to try to help people physically heal. But if they want to mental heal, theta production is the big one that's going to help with that. Do we have any questions on the frequencies themselves? No, we're doing good. Perfect. So what we're going to look at is depression. Go. What's the question, sir?
Isn't there a frequency of the earth itself?
The frequency of the earth itself, yes. Depending on the people, I've heard it's the Schumann as well, which is at 7.81. Don't quote me on that, but yes, there is a resonant frequency of the earth as well. What you need to understand about frequencies is when we talk about this, the rate that the nerves fire at is what we're talking about. So it's not just one neuron, it's a conglomeration of millions and hundreds of millions and the firing rate that they have. So it's kind of like a cloud. And if the overall average is high alpha, you have a good memory. If the average is low alpha, then we have a poor memory. We try to make it really cut and dry, but it's not that simple. It's like, how fast do waves come onto the beach? Well, if the average is 11, then you're high. And if the average is 9, you're low. That's what we're actually looking at. So what we're going to look at now is depression. We'll start talking about this. So when we talk about depression, we know that in Colorado, roughly 50% of the people in Colorado are suffering from either depression or anxiety. So it's a very prevalent issue that we have. Understanding that depression is not a character flaw. Depression is not just a chemical imbalance. It's actually a neurological adaptation to stress. And why does it show up? And we're going to get into it and see what happens. Anxiety is a little different, but depression is literally a response to a threat, loss, inflammation, or stress overload. So what you need to understand about depression is it's about conservation of energy. It's about using your energy to help yourself heal. That's why the depressive response will actually come on board. So depression is going to show up where we're trying to save energy. So we're going to decrease high energy events or actions such as joy or big energy outbursts and expression, because we're literally trying to heal ourselves because we're overloaded by the environment of either a thought process or the external that we are experiencing. So this is causing us to have symptoms such as low motivation, brain fog, poor sleep, loss of pleasure, irritability, fatigue, physical pain, gut issues, and I'm not just going for puberty there. And it's leading to, overall, we can have issues like low serotonin. That's the chemical aspect, but there's a neurological aspect, and I'll get into that as well. So when we look at this, we need to understand there's underlying things that are driving those symptoms. If you take, say, an SSRI or a serotonin product or an SSNRI or anything with S in it, so serotonin, and it doesn't work, it's because the serotonin isn't the issue. There's a higher order issue that's actually going on. So what are things that are causing the serotonin to not bind is going to be things like chronic stress or inflammation. Now understand, when I say stress, that can be completely interchanged with inflammation. Every single time you have emotional stress, chemical stress, or physical stress, you will get a cytokine response. Your body actually becomes more acidic. We don't want that. And when it becomes more acidic, it becomes harder for chemicals to bind. It becomes harder to make more energy because it actually changes how the mitochondria make energy. That's one upstream effect that can cause us to go into depression. Another one can be uncontrolled blood sugars. So if we have uncontrolled blood sugars, it can cause increase of triglycerides, which will bind to the receptor sites of hormones, and it will make it harder for the hormones to actually bind to it. It'll make it harder for the neurotransmitters to bind. So basically gums everything up. Sleep deprivation can cause it as well. So if we're not sleeping or we're doing shift work, that can definitely lead to depression as well. When we look at the main neurotransmitter correlated to depression, it's serotonin. And serotonin is actually stimulated to turn on based on light sensitivity. So there's a part of the brain that literally, when you're exposed to light, will help you produce or store more serotonin in your brain. So 90% of the serotonin is made in the gut, but if you don't have that light exposure, your brain will not store it correctly, and you will actually get serotonin deficiencies, which can cause depression. That's why if you're somebody who is very sensitive to light exposures, like I am, I had SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, when I was in Canada. So literally what we had to do before everybody had a full spectrum light, we had to buy a very special full spectrum light and plug it in and turn it on. It took like half an hour. Well, it felt like half an hour. It's probably only 5 minutes for it to light up, and then the room would get bright enough and I could respond correctly. But if you're one of those people, it's telling you that if it's overcast and after 2 to 3 days you're not happy, that's telling us we have a serotonin issue. If you're like, I just get angry and snappy when it's overcast for long periods of time, that means serotonin problem. And we got to figure out, okay, we have that problem. Is it just light, or is there something else going on? Like I was saying, chronic stress, inflammation, blood sugar. Like, what is something that can cause chronic inflammation? Autoimmune. If you have an autoimmune disease, you will have chronic inflammation. What will cause chronic inflammation? Other things like chronic infections. So you can have a low-grade dental infection. You can have something in your foot or your hand or your gut or something like that going on. That will cause chronic inflammation. Long term, that's going to cause us to have problems with producing serotonin, and it will cause that cytokine or inflammatory response that makes it harder for the body to use the nutrients correctly. Trauma can also drive this. So we can think about things like physical traumas, falls, trips, bacterial infections, but we also need to understand emotional trauma. So emotional trauma is worse, in my opinion, than physical. With emotional trauma, you can get triggered over and over and over again. With physical, you usually have to be in the exact place where the trauma happened, or the same smell or something like that happens. But with emotional, just thinking of that person can re-traumatize you. So that can cause that inflammatory response, because what's going to happen is every time you stress, you will actually spike your blood sugars because your body's getting ready to run and fight. And then your body will suck it in with insulin. But when you spike insulin, it turns on inflammation. It actually causes cytokine storms. It will cause an inflammatory response, which makes it harder for us to actually heal, because we're having this chronic inflammatory response because our sugars are going up and down. So if you have diabetes where it's out of control because your sugars aren't good, that can cause inflammation. But if you're just reliving the trauma over and over and over again, that will cause the actual inflammation to spread as well. You can also have depression because of nutrient deficiencies. So as I've talked in prior classes, if we have a gut issue, we need the gut to work correctly in the vagus nerve. But the nutrients that can help you specifically with serotonin production, we have a product called Serotonin Active, which gives you all the building blocks. But these are basic nutrients that will help you decrease inflammation. So we have things like B vitamins. It's going to help you have energy. Omega-3s, magnesium. These are very basic things, as well as sunlight, that will help your body work correctly, have enough energy. If we need to know if it's exactly a certain product that you need, we can always do a test where we actually give you 12 of the supplements. You have to buy them, but it's very cost effective that way. And you try it for 2 days, and we'll actually see if you respond correctly or not. If we give it to you and you feel no change, it either tells me serotonin isn't an issue, or we have one of those underlying issues going on, such as blood sugar, sleep, chronic inflammation, stress, other things that are not allowing it to heal. You had a question?
Vitamin C, another one.
Yeah, vitamin C is another one in there as well. Correct. So the takeaway is to understand that when we're looking at depression, there's multifactorial. Then we get into the brain. And the brain is, I'll just say it because it gets complex, but it's with the brain, there are multiple areas that can drive it. If you have frontal lobe depression, it can be caused by high beta on the right side of your brain or high alpha and theta on the left side of your brain. So that's what causes depression in the frontal lobe. But what can cause depression in the back of your brain is if you have too much stress, and you'll have too much beta in the back of your brain. So basically, if your brain isn't balanced, you can get depression or anxiety. And if you see those people that flip-flop, that's when they're going from either back to front or side to side. So you'll get your bipolar type things when you go side to side usually. Go right to left, and back and forth. Do we have any questions on depression? We're good? So the next one we're going to talk about is fibromyalgia. I don't think I've done many talks on this, and we're doing this because I've had quite a few ladies, and it's usually ladies that I see that come in with this. So fibromyalgia is not a mask diagnosis. It's actually a neurological issue. The problem is it's an easy push off if the medical practitioner doesn't know what it is. They'll say, well, you just have fibromyalgia. If you get an EEG done or a brain scan done, there are very specific data points that will show me if you have fibromyalgia or not. To have full-blown fibromyalgia, we will get 4 specific data points. The main one that will show up is that your theta over alpha ratio is less than 0.8. And what this means in simplistic terms is in the frontal part of your brain, you're supposed to have more slow brain waves than fast brain waves. So if you are traumatized and you get stressed out, your brain will actually try to protect you by speeding up the frontal lobe. So this is going to be different than depression. Yes.
And have you heard of EMDR?
Yeah, EMDR, yeah.
Could that help with that?
So the question is, can EMDR help with it? EMDR is very productive if you have a high alpha production. If you have low alpha production in your brain, EMDR will not be helpful for you because you have to be able to visualize. So if you have true PTSD with an alpha suppression, EMDR won't work because you can't actually visualize the trauma of the past. So what we do to help people with that is we'll actually push them with either laser or neural feedback. Then they go into EMDR and they'll have breakthroughs. I've had multiple people who've been doing EMDR therapies I had one lady who'd been doing it for 30 years. And in a month of the care that we did, she got equivalent to changes doing your EMDR as the prior 30 years because her visualization was impacted. You guys have any other questions on that? No? Okay. So with the fibromyalgia, what we'll see is you have less slow to fast brain waves. What this means is the brain is moving quicker and it will actually speed up. So you'll have way more fast brain waves. You have more usually beta and alpha frequency. And when you do that, it'll actually burn you out quickly. These people, when the ratio goes below 0.8, it's literally like the light switch went fully up and now everything hurts. It's not just like a little bit, it's everything is at max. So that means pressure hurts, chemicals hurt, temperature hurts. Everything hurts because the body's in full speed up mode. So the last one, we're talking about depression, the body says we're going to compensate by turning everything down. This one is we're going speed up and we're going straight up as fast as we can, pedal to the metal, hard, very, very, very quickly. So that's one of the markers. Another marker is that your theta, alpha, or beta will be more dominant on one side than the other in the frontal lobe. That's more of a generic term, but we'll usually see more to the right side or more to the left. Usually it's more to the left. The next marker that we'll see is we'll start seeing fatigue in the frontal lobe. So remember that high-low alpha that I was talking about? So we got alpha high divided by alpha low. And when this is higher than 1.5, it means the brain's fatiguing. So when I see this high-low alpha ratio above 1.5, it tells me the brain is fatiguing and we're going to have memory issues. That also tells me that we're going to have an overall fatigue issue. So this ratio of high-low alpha, when it's above 1.5, is what we see in 90% of autoimmune cases because the brain is literally fatigued and it can't actually control the immune system correctly. Then the other 20 to 30% of autoimmune, we'll see the back of the brain, O1. We'll see the theta over beta ratio less than 1.8. So what does that mean? The back of the brain is in more of a racing state and you're trying to figure it out. So the whole pattern that we see is the brain is faster in the front, faster in the back, and fatiguing in the middle. And it means fast, 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 but you've gone so fast that you've actually started to fatigue the frontal lobe because it can't process everything as quickly as it should, the executive center. And this is when we'll go into autoimmune type issues. And this is why you'll see cross symptoms with fibromyalgia. So fibromyalgia chronically has fatigue, pain, and sleep issues all in the same area. The one area that we commonly see, though, is the frontal lobe. When we see that, I go, you have a fibromyalgia marker. If you have more than that, we commonly see the frontal lobe, which is this one, and the back of the brain. I go, okay, you got 2 of the 4 fibromyalgia markers. And then we'll usually have this one sprinkled in. If you have all 4, then yeah, things chronically hurt all the time. And it can.
The laser, and what else?
For what, fibro? So for people with fibromyalgia, we use laser and neurofeedback and adjustment as well, but we'll also see if there's any underlying drivers like they saw in depression. So we'll see, is there any other chemical drivers? Is there leaky gut? Is there anything else? Like if you have low serotonin and dopamine, you can be more prone to pain. But if that's normal, it's literally just a hypersensitive brain. That means your brain is running so quickly, you sped up so much that it literally is causing you to feel pain more than you should. So it's not that you are fibbing and not making sense. It's literally that you touch the person and they feel like you just hit them with a baseball bat. So they're oversensitive. They're oversensitized. A common driver of this is going to be a chemical imbalance, specifically things like blood sugars being out of position. So if you're chronically high blood sugars or chronically low, you're going to have that cytokines and chronic inflammation. It's just a oversensitive, overfeeling in the body. So what you get is common symptoms like the pain, the tiredness, chronic fatigue, sleep issues, headaches, bowel issues, anxiety, depression, and all that. But it's coming from an overproductive stress response. And the only way that I've ever been able to see true fibromyalgia is to do the EEG. The test that you'll commonly see the medical practitioners do is the push test, and they'll say if you have so many sensitive points, you can have sensitive points because you worked out the day before or you're dehydrated. If you really want to know if the person has it, the EEG, in my opinion, is the gold standard because you'll know where the problem actually is there. And with these people, it's literally night and day when you watch the numbers go above. It will literally turn the dimmer switch right down and the pain will disappear as soon as you get the frontal lobe above 0.8. Go ahead, yeah.
Why does this fibromyalgia affect females?
Why does it affect females more? The answer is I don't have a good answer for you. I can tell you what can predispose them. Like if you have something like glial priming or blood sugar issues, that can predispose them. In my career, I've seen that the majority of females that I see that come into the office actually have hypo or low blood sugar issues, which is going to predispose them to chronic inflammation. And they're usually like fit and that's because they're burning so quickly that they're going to set themselves up for that. But I don't have a definitive answer for you why we see it more in females than males. They can say it's a genetic predisposition, but the truth is I don't know. I really don't know. I've heard different theories, but when we see the brain patterns, that's what we'll chronically see. Now, I will tell you that I will see more of the racing back of the brain and the obsession compulsive problems in females, which would predispose you to having that fatigue here and the higher frequencies here. Usually with guys, you see them check out more. With females, you see them just push up more. So that's what I've seen in my career, but I can't tell you why. So things that can set you up for fibromyalgia are those chronic cytokine storms. So that's lower high blood sugar, chronic inflammation, infection, different things like that. So it's basically, when I say cytokine, I'm just talking about chronic inflammation. And the Elver activity of glial priming. So what that means is if you've hit your head or been exposed to chemicals, that can actually stimulate the glial cells, which are the protective cells, to cause you to become overreactive and make the nerves fire quicker, which can make you be set up for the fibromyalgia type issues. So we can see this with people who have chronic mold exposure, where the mold can actually cause the glial priming and set you up for those forms of symptoms. Do you guys have any questions about either the depression or fibromyalgia type symptoms? Go ahead. Yep.
Based on the scans that you do here with people,
Mhm.
would we know how, if like, for instance, if EMDR would help?
Based on the scans we do here, would we know if they would be a good candidate for EMDR? Yes. So with EMDR, it is a technique that is used to make you link left and right hemispheres of the brain, and therapists usually do it. They'll use eye movements or kinesthetic vibration or sound to actually help the brain link. Now, if the person shows PTSD markers where their alpha is suppressed, they will not respond well to EMDR. If they have normal alpha frequencies or at least not suppressed, then they should respond really well to EMDR. So with an EEG, we would know if the person could respond well. And EMDR is mainly used to remove trauma and help bring up past experiences. So with the question is, can you know if EMDR would be a good response? Yes. With the testing we do, we'll know if the person is going to respond well to it. We'll also know why they have, if they have brain-based fibromyalgia, or if they have chronic, like we can have people with chronic pain that are literally dehydrated. I've seen that multiple times, or have B vitamin deficiencies because they're drinking too much, or different things like that. So we can see those are the simple ones. The ones we'll usually get are the ones where you get the neurological component. We'll also be able to see if you're somebody that, if your depression is frontal lobe, you may respond okay to pharmaceuticals. If it's the back of the brain, the pharmaceutical will not help it at all, because depending on the region of the brain, the pharmaceutical majority of the time is more frontal lobe oriented, because that's how you experience the world day to day. And depending on where the problem is, will let us know if you're going to be a good candidate to respond to those medications or not, because your brain is more stable. But take this into account. If you have chronic blood sugar or stress or cortisol or gut issues, the medication is going to be a hard time to work, because of the underlying issue that's stopping it from working correctly. So understand those things I just mentioned, like blood sugar, stress, inflammation, gut issues. It literally makes it so the binding sites clog up, and then you can't get the actual firing rates that you want to have. So understand that if somebody does have chronic pain, it doesn't mean they have to go on heavy meds like a gabapentin or heavy antidepressants. There are ways to help them get better naturally, that there are no side effects. As well as if somebody has depression, we have to look at it. Depression is one of the harder ones. Anxiety is actually quite straightforward, but depression is harder because there's so many cofactors that can drive it. So you have to figure out what's actually causing it. The EEG will let us know, and then we may have to do blood work to figure out what else is driving it. Because you can get depression, I didn't even go over this, you can get it just because you have gone through menopause and now you have low estrogen levels, and estrogen determines binding of serotonin. So if you have low estrogen and then you can't bind serotonin, now you're depressed. So there's multiple factorial things that we can look at, but when you look at it, then you can pinpoint what the issue is. You don't have to play spray and pray and try the different things and see what happens. You can literally go, okay, this is what's going on. Make sugar normal. Let's see if you get better. And I'll tell you, logistically, blood sugar regulation 90% of the time is the answer. That's the big kahuna that most people miss. And the one that I commonly get is low blood sugar. High blood sugar is chronically taken care of in allopathic medicine or medical doctor medicine. Low blood sugar is not touched. In the functional range, if you're below 85, you have a problem. Doesn't mean you're dead. It just means you're going to have chronic inflammation. So understand when we talk about functional range, it's what stops inflammation and makes you healthy. If we talk about allopathic, that means what makes disease. So you have to be below 50 for disease function to happen. So with that being said, there are different ways to help people, and we want to make them understand that you can get help if you think you've tried everything, because there are different ways to look at it and different ways to take care of the people. So my hope is that you can be a light for somebody who has depression or has chronic pain or has chronic fatigue, and let them know there are ways to get better. And that once you get the underlying big issue gone, it's your sugars, your stress, whatever it is, you will get better. You will improve. There's always a cause. It's not, I'm unfixable. It's just nobody's asked the right question yet. If we get the right question, we'll get the right answer. So I want to thank you all for being here. Please help a friend or family member, and have a blessed night.